I'd like to invite our panelists back up to the stage, Dr. Park, Dr. Banerjee, and His Excellency Dr. Nasser Khalili.
One more.
There's two groups of people I'd like to thank today. Our panelists here who flew many miles to join us, Dr. Park from Korea, Dr. Nasser Khalili from the UK, and Dr. Banerjee from UNESCO in Paris. I'm sure you have many questions for them, so I'm going to keep my remarks very brief so that you have as much time to ask questions. Similar to previous sessions, it's going to be an interactive session whereby we're going to field all of your questions and then move over to some of the Twitter questions. So with that, let's please open the question and answer session. And I know it's after lunch, but I'm impressed to see so many people here, and we expect this to be very active. Mr. Waleed's already got a question over there, so maybe we can start with him. Who has the microphone?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا سمحتوا لي بس أسأل باللغة الإنجليزية. Gentlemen, for the past 2 days, we have been sort of learning about the knowledge society and how best we establish a knowledge society under all dimensions. But there is just one question that I had for the past 2 days while I was listening to the distinguished speakers about this fascinating subject is how to establish a line of sight between the great vision of achieving a knowledge-based society and the everyday human being living in the society. How can we sort of ignite the passion and instill the spirit of knowledge societies and the very thinking and psyche and the intellect of people? Thank you.
Dr. Park, maybe you can address this.
Well, building a knowledge society is clearly an adaptive change, not technical change. When you do what you do as usual, business as usual, that's technical change. But you cannot do that with building a knowledge society because it requires change in the hearts and minds of people. And so changing the mindset of the people, what does it require? I leave that question to you.
And Dr. Banerjee?
Well, I think that's a very, very interesting question, but the answer is actually quite simple. The fact is that we people, we adults, we academics, we started with the idea of analyzing society and see how society is changing. And in the meantime, all these technologies started spreading. And that's why I said, one of my comments during my presentation was that the young people know very well what knowledge societies are all about. But they don't look at it as a concept or anything. They know that they have tools with which they are empowered. They know they have tools with which they can access information from anywhere. They know they can share information with friends, be on social networking sites, and that already has started empowering them. Yeah. And I don't think we have to remind them every day that they are members of the knowledge societies. They are very much part of the game. Perhaps they are leading the game, but our job is to ensure from government side that there are enabling policy environments, that they have easy access. From the private sector side, their job is to ensure that these tools are accessible. But as far as players are concerned, that's why I think your question is very interesting. They are passionate, they are totally engaged. They have to understand that this is part of a larger movement, which we call knowledge societies.
Thank you, Doctor. Next question, please. Doctor.
I have two questions. The first one for Dr. Banerjee is how could we measure the knowledge society? As you know, and everyone in this room knows, that it's very hard to measure the knowledge society, and we will keep arguing what are the right pillars for knowledge society. So do you think UNESCO has plans for developing measurements or indicators to measure knowledge society? This is the first question. The second question for Professor Khalili is, as a well-known Islamic art collector, how do you think the impact of technology and the new trends of technology among the younger generation on the appreciation of art? Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Obviously, art plays a huge role, as I said at the end of my small presentation. We have to use knowledge and art to conquer distances between human beings and ourselves. Humanity needs help from humans. That's how it goes. I've been listening from day one to a lot of speeches and presentation, and I realize that knowledge is like a magnificent plane. A lot of care and experience goes into it to be built. The engine is the knowledge. The fuel is the youth. You have to bring the youth on board to fly that plane for you. It's extremely important to use art and knowledge, but then you could be on the greatest ship in the world. You have a captain, but without the sailors with you, you cannot go from A to B. So you do need help from the future generation. You need to bring the youth. You need to educate the youngsters to make them understand that they have responsibility. And unless you open the door for them, they cannot walk in and discover for themselves what they need to do. So it's not that what the country has to do for them. They have to learn, as Kennedy said, what they can do for the country.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes, I think that question about indicators crops up all the time. Fortunately, the answer is that we are in the process of developing some indicators. I think work or research like the Arab Knowledge Development Report has got also several indicators which are interesting. There is a Global Innovation Index, which is called the GII, which is a fantastic indicator, and I would like you to have a look at that to see which are the countries which are at the forefront of innovation. But to a certain extent, the knowledge societies are much more difficult to measure because, for example, how do you measure linguistic and cultural diversity? What could be the indicators for that? Access to information can be measured through access, how many people have mobile phones, how many people have internet penetration, so that's rather easy. But the difficult thing is that even when you have a statistic saying in Saudi Arabia, let's say, there are 10 million people with mobile phones. That's not a sufficient measure because you have to also know what do they do with these mobile phones. Do they use these mobile phones for accessing the internet? For example, many African countries, 80% of access to the internet is through mobile phones. So you know what they're doing. They're looking for information, etc. In some other countries, you're probably just sending SMSs or chatting away, and that's okay too. But what is the use of these tools for what specific purposes? That becomes more difficult to measure. But I agree with you that we need to have some benchmarks of some kinds.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Can we take one more question? And let's focus on this side of the room, please. And then we'll shoot over to this Twitter question here. Just this. Over here, please.
أبدأ. ألو.
Right.
في صوت. السلام عليكم. اسمحوا لي أن ألقي سؤالي باللغة العربية اللغات الأصلية وبدوركم تقومون مشكورين بترجمتها إلى ضيوفنا الكرام. معكم هدى الفهيد معلمة تربية خاصة وعضو مجلس إدارة الجمعية السعودية للسلامة المرورية. نلاحظ أن هناك تركيز على الشراكة المجتمعية بين جهات عديدة تصب في قناة النجاح في بناء الإنسان المتعلم، ولكن للأسف يلاحظ أن تركيزنا على وضع البرامج المطورة والدعوة لاستخدام التقنية لا يتوافق مع تركيزنا على البناء العقلي للإنسان لتقبل هذا التقدم العلمي، مما يؤدي إلى تأخر الإنجازات بفعل عدم تقبل الجديد في التطور العلمي. سؤالي عفواً، متى يتم البناء المعرفي العقلي القائم على التطوير في جميع الجوانب مع التركيز على وضع البرامج والدعوة لاستخدام التقنية بشكل متساوي تصاعدي تكاملي فيما بينهم؟ وشكراً.
Dr. Banerjee, would you like to take this question? And potentially Dr. Park might also want to comment.
I'm sorry, I don't know whether Dr. Park got the translation. My translation was, I didn't get much out of it, so.
Okay. Maybe we could ask the person who asked the question to rephrase it so that the translator can give us a clearer translation. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, just... Yeah.
اوكي
Okay.
اوكي سؤالي
Please, go.
طيب سؤالي جاي عندكم عشان ترجمونه.
The question is, there is emphasis on building infrastructure and ecosystems for knowledge society, but there is lack of emphasis on building the metastructure, which is the intellectual capacity for people to. So what is your thought on building the intellectual capacity, the metastructure for knowledge society?
Well, that's an excellent question. If you saw many of the presentations that we had, they kept talking about capacity building. And that UNESCO has seen, for example, the capacity building remains a major challenge. To give you a simple example, there are schools, many schools in many parts of the world where they were fully computerized. So there were computers, there was some basic software, of course, but the content, the local content was not relevant to the people in that country, number one. Number two, the teachers themselves did not have the capacity to use these tools effectively, and therefore it created huge capacity building gaps. Therefore, you will notice that for about the last 6 or 7 years, most agencies, instead of focusing on infrastructure and tools and so on and so forth, are focusing on capacity building on one side and content on the other, because these two have been the gaps. You may put broadband access, you can put high-speed internet, but if you don't have locally relevant content, and if you don't have the capacity of people, that's why I mentioned media and information literacy. That is the way we can build human capacity. We can tune, I think you used the word the human brain, to better use these technologies.
Thank you, Doctor. I believe you had a question. Can we please have a microphone here at the front table on the left?
Thank you very much. I just have a question to Professor Khalili. Thank you. I enjoyed your talk. You said something about if ignorance is a problem, then surely knowledge is the solution. I think spreading the knowledge is the solution. We have a lot to do. The fact that people, they don't know a lot about Islam is we don't spread the knowledge. So if you can elaborate more about ignorance and its role in the negativity thoughts, or just if you can elaborate about the fact that ignorance has a lot to do with problems and knowledge is the solution. Thank you.
You see, throughout all the exhibition that we have given for the last 40 years, and especially the Hajj exhibition, I realized how powerful the message of Islam is and how misunderstood Islam is worldwide. And I think we all have a responsibility, because all we hear, unfortunately, is how much is wrong with Islam. But there is by far more what is right with Islam that is wrong with Islam. There is nothing wrong with Islam. It's a perception of ignorance of the people that make them not to understand the glory, the understanding, the harmony and democracy of Islam. Every one of us have a responsibility. You have to go out there and fight your corner. Nobody gives you anything. You go out there and take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Let's take this Twitter question, Dr. Park. How can we achieve a collaborative, non-hierarchical society with a capitalist milieu? Is this possible?
Before that, I could make a quick comment on the technology and human capacity building question. In the Korean case, when Korea was a recipient of international aid in the wake of the end of Korean War, there were, two projects to simplify the scene. Project on building the hospital and project on training doctors. And actually turned out, to make the long story short, training of the doctors turned out to be much more impactful in the end. And that experience is replicated in the Korean aid to many developing countries where, in fact, training and empowering people turns out to be much more consequential for development of the local countries. About this question, capitalism evolves. Capitalism we practice today is different from the one we had in the 1930s. Right? And the one we practice today is different from the one we practice in the immediate post-war period. It evolves. It's not monolithic. Capitalism has many forms, and it depends on how you practice it. Policy choice, human choice, despite structural constraints, you can make difference. You can shape and mold the kind of capitalism you practice. And so I emphasize that the role of human choice in making history here. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And do you want us with a question, please? Ask away. Over here.
بسم الله والسلام عليكم جميعا. هني عبيد كلية العلوم والآداب بالنعيرية.
Wait one sec while we get the
الشكر عرفان نلتمس به زيادة من الله ثم الناس. فاسمحوا لنا في البدء أن نتقدم بالشكر للذين أعدوا هذا المنتدى الرائع، ومن حيث أتتنا الدعوة من عمادة تنمية المجتمع، تلك العمادة الحديثة بجامعة الدمام التي ولدت بأسنانها. سؤالي للدكتور باراك، ذكر أنه لابد من تضافر الجهود حتى نصل إلى مجتمع المعرفة، وتحدث متحدث قبله في الجلسة السابقة عن دور الشباب، فنحن نثمن على ذلك الدور لأنه الشباب هم استثمارنا البشري الذي يحمل الراية من بعدنا قوية بإذن الله تعالى. لكن لكي نخلق مجتمع للمعرفة لابد لنا من وضع البذرة السليمة، فالشجرة تسقى من جذورها وإن أتت ثمارة، وذلك لابد أن يكون في الأسرة، بدءا في الأسرة، إن كانت المرأة هي ربة الأسرة أو الأم. فهذا الدور أرى أنه في المنتدى لم يستوفى حقه. فهل يتحدث لنا عن دور المرأة التي تضع تلك الجذور لبرنامج المعرفة الذي هو في حالة صيرورة في كل فترة والأخرى؟ وشكرا.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad you asked that question. One of the main issues that you have to understand, and I'm supposing that people would know what I'm going to say, out of 3 billion world population, half are women. That's number one. And the mother of the other half are the women too. So women have a huge role to play in Islam, in every other religion equally. But what you said about the youth is extremely important. You are 100% right. But to create a powerful force using the young generation, you need a powerful group of educated and well-informed teachers too. The teachers play a huge role in the life of every one of us. If you go back, you realize, when you get to my age, that the majority of the knowledge or wisdom that you received was not necessarily from your parents, it was from your teachers. The teachers play a good role. So you have first to educate the teachers to make sure that the information which is passed to the students are viable and correct information.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Park, or if you'd like to comment, we can shift to the next question if you prefer.
I think I'd like to emphasize respect to youth. They clearly are the future of our society, international society, national, local. So in that sense, having an open international society mindset is very important. Youth, children, learn from what we practice, not really what we preach. And so the way we treat strangers in our societies, maybe the way we regard a child in Somalia, may be reflected in the way youth and children grow to become adults, individuals. And so I think maybe the ultimate aim of a knowledge society is to really be a cosmopolitan outlook person. I'll end there.
Thank you, Dr. Park. Any more questions? Over here. Please.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, okay. Sure, go ahead. Please, Doctor.
I think my question is probably it can be answered by any one member of the panel, but maybe Dr. Park will care to comment on it. We are all aware of the wonderful possibilities and the powerful tools of novel technologies. But in many cases, actually, traditional technologies that have emerged and developed in response to environmental constraints and environmental stimuli across countless generations offer sometimes the best available technologies to deal with present-day problems. What in an emerging knowledge society like Korea has enough attention being given to traditional technologies that are eco-friendly and sustainable and have economic advantages in the long term? Thank you.
Please, Dr. Park. Or if you'd like to comment, Dr. Sure.
I'm glad that you brought technology to our attention. Technology can be a tremendous blessing, and it can be a tremendous menace too. It depends how you harness it. Like everything else in life, if you harness any issue in life with a clear mind and clear direction, you get there. Nowadays, the information is so available. I mean, you could find about anybody at the top of a button. Just press a button and you get the information about anybody you want. So that can be harnessed the way that you want to shape and form the future of your country or the future of yourself. Technology is important, but as I said, it could be a huge blessing and it could be a huge menace.
Well, I think this is going to continue to remain a challenge. Oftentimes, what happens is traditional forms and bases of knowledge disappear when new tools and technologies come. No doubt about it. But what is particularly interesting, I come from India, so I can tell you the Indian experience. What is particularly interesting is how these same technologies have been used to revive old traditions. This is the most interesting thing. For example, there are in some parts of India weavers who weave carpets, etc., and many of them are women. And with the industrial production, with etc., with all the marketing and branding going on, they were actually disappearing until somebody discovered them and put all of this online, and they started getting orders from around the world, not even from the local area. So things can turn around. I think what is critical is how do you harness these tools. The other example I can give you is about local traditional forms of medicine. That also in India, with all the hospitals and allopathic medicines and drugs coming in, that was completely dying out until some people said, these are medicines which have been tried and tested for centuries, and they have their value. So now you see, for example, you can go to Paris and you can find Ayurvedic medicine or homeopathic medicine. So some things get lost, some things are reborn. That's the way I look at it. And one cannot stop time anyway.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Park, if you'd like to comment.
I agree with all of you.
Okay, excellent, thank you. We have time for one more question. over. And then we're going to go.
Yes.
To
First
the
of all,
last.
I would like to thank you all for a very fruitful and resourceful, event. I would like to thank also the people who have arranged this. Of course, most importantly, I would like to thank all the volunteers who will be receiving us and putting us at ease and comfort in this big event. Now, something is really, I haven't been very comfortable with the, basically, maybe it's a little bit philosophical here, but the word knowledge here seems to be an oxymoron in the sense that we are not really, we're trying to create a knowledge society. But the word knowledge, according to the HRD, maybe this question, Dr. Park, and maybe you guys can comment on it, about, in the field of human resource development, usually the launching pad is a character building, and the attitude, KSA, knowledge, skills, attitude. The launching pad is the most important thing now. Knowledge usually is not the most important thing, but it's the byproduct of the launching pad, which is the character building and the attitude, and the mannerism and the ethics that are anchoring people in the best practices and the best, basically, formation or production of that knowledge. Now, Dr. Park, you've mentioned about the community of commitment, communities, which is the most important thing with the collaboration. And that's not I think the knowledge will come out, the product of that. So how do you think about the word knowledge in itself is an oxymoron? Basically, you're shooting yourself in the foot here. That's mine. Anything about the word? Because the knowledge seems to be a little bit misleading here, knowledge. Because what comes under knowledge is completely something that will lead, that are the most important thing in building the character. And we've seen just a very important example now of somebody who's leading this event, jumping to translate on the spot. That's a leader that you need in the society.
Doctor, if you'd like to comment on that.
Maybe I did not understand the latter part of the comment, but then as far as I understood, I fully agree with you. The importance of yes.
What I'm saying is that you've got three things in human resource development: knowledge, skills, and character building. Now, the most important thing in the three, according to human resource, is basically the attitude and the character that will lead you to knowledge and will make sustainability and will lead to building of skills. Now, the term here is misleading, knowledge, and of course, I'm not challenging that. I'm challenging the whole theme of knowledge. The word knowledge in itself, I'm just seeking your opinion of using the word knowledge, because if knowledge is the most important things, we wouldn't find some societies who are really misbehaving in the whole world.
Well, I think the use of the word oxymoron is rather harsh, because oxymoron means opposites, and what you're talking about are not opposites.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, you're coming from a human resource angle only.
Okay.
That's not the only angle there is. As you know, knowledge can be defined philosophically. Knowledge can be defined from a cultural and anthropological or sociological perspective. So there are a range of perspectives. Now, my question to you back is, can you have character building without knowledge and vice versa? So we will keep going around in circles. The point is, knowledge is an enabler. Even for building a good character, you need knowledge. And so when we talk about knowledge societies, we are not looking at it as an end. And on that point, I agree fully with you. It cannot be an end in itself when it doesn't perform anything else.
Okay.
So point taken. But I'm saying from knowledge societies, we're looking at knowledge as an input, as an enabler to achieve a variety of goals. Knowledge for scientific research, knowledge for production, knowledge for empowerment of people, knowledge. So we're looking at it as an input and an enabler and not an end in itself. So I partially agree with you, but I think there are a variety of perspectives on this.
Thank you.
Right. Dr. Park, would you like to comment?
I guess you might have taken the analytical perspective on the three concepts maybe a little too far. You can be synthetic. They don't have to be fragmented. As Professor Banerjee has said, they can be integral.
Thank you, Dr. Park. I want to take this last question because I think it's a good end to this session and to the conference in general. And I'd like to ask each of the panelists, can you give us one sentence, one takeaway that all of the attendees at the conference should understand and walk away with that they can use at work, in their lives. Please, Doctor.
I think we could encapsulate by saying that knowledge can be compared to 20-story buildings. You have to walk the step from bottom to the top to get there. You cannot take a helicopter and find the easy way to drop you on the top. It's a journey that you have to take.
Dr. Banerjee, your one-sentence takeaway?
You know, one sentence can be very long.
Yeah, it can be.
It can be a whole page. Well, my key point is, especially to the young people here, is breathe, enjoy these new technologies, use them positively, and go as far as you can go.
All right. And Dr. Park?
Knowledge society is what we make of it. So, human choice, once again. We can make difference, we can make history, albeit under circumstances by not choosing.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the audience. I'd like to close this session. Thank you. There's one. No, sorry. Sorry? Sorry, sir. I'm getting the complete. Maybe we can take the question off to the side and.
Oh, okay. Not a question. It's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
If we can, I don't know about the management, if we can take one comment, just a comment.
No, there is no question for anybody. Let me go a little bit there.
Yeah, sorry.
سمعت الكثير. أنا دعيت لكي أحضر لهذا المنتدى، لكن للأسف الشديد في نقطة هامة يمكن بعضنا أغفلها. صحيح هناك قول مدحك الرجل في وجهه مذمة، أما شكر فهذا مطلوب ومرغوب. قبل 50 سنة أو 53 سنة حضرت إلى أرامكو في دراسة، كنت في مدرسة المتوسطة. الانطباع أنه شركة أرامكو هي شركة تختص بالبترول، وهي كذلك، لكن الحقيقة لم أسمع أي أحد من الإخوان، أو قد أكون أنا ما سمعته، وهو يشكر مركز الملك عبد العزيز، يشكر شركة أرامكو ممثلة برئيسها والقائد وقائد الشركة، وليس مدير الشركة، هو من يحتضن الإخوان وزملاؤه لكي يسيروا معا نحو التقدم. أنا بدي أقولها بكل أمانة، كنت أنا خايف أجي في المنتدى العالمي للمجتمع المعرفة، حسمع إيه، حشوف إيه. من ضمن الأوراق اللي جاتني إنه هل نجح المنتدى؟ من وجهة نظري الشخصية نعم، نجح المنتدى. أنا حضرت كثير من الاجتماعات وكثير من المؤتمرات وكثير من المنتديات، وأقوله بفخر إنه هذا المنتدى واحد من أفضل، وليس أفضل ولكن من أفضل 3-5 المنتديات التي حضرتها والتي استفدت منها. هل نجح؟ نعم نجح. كم نسبة النجاح؟ بالنسبة لي أنا نسبة النجاح عالية جدا، ولو أن أنا ترى على فكرة بخيل جدا في إعطاء درجة عالية، لكن نجح تمام. الشكر لكل من ساهم، لكل من أعطى، لكل من بذل، لكل من أبدى رأي أو محاضرة. ولهذا أنا كنت أحب أقول إنه قائد الشركة، موظفين الشركة، الفولنتير اللي تشرفت معرفتهم، الإخوان اللي حضروا، الأخوات، بناتي وأبنائي، وإنتم اللي أثريتوا هذا المنتدى. كان في سؤال لي: هل تود أن تحضر المنتدى؟ قلت نعم، بشرط أن يتوجه لي دعوة. فهذه الدعوة بقولها لأخي وصديقي فؤاد. شكرا جزيلا. واعتذر انه انا اطلب هذه الكلمه، ولكنني وجدت انه انا من الواجب انه نحن كلنا let's give a hand لشركه ارامكو.
شكرا جزيلا.